Video game movies are a long-running joke in both the video game and the film industry, with good reason. But is the problem a fundamental flaw in video games themselves, or how they are adapted to the movie format? Movies based off video games have had horrible critical reception. While some of them have made a good deal of money, the recent Warcraft movie having made over $430 million at the box office, it's hard to argue with the fact that no video game movie has above a score of 58 out of 100 on Metacritic. And that was from the Mortal Kombat movie that came out in 1995. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, it's a score of 36% for Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. I never saw the original Mortal Kombat movie, but I did see Prince of Persia, and it's honestly about the best you can hope for most video game movie adaptations. Enjoyable, but ultimately nothing to write home about. I'm not saying I don't think a movie based off a video game can be legitimately great, but the difficulty of adapting between the two is much greater than most would perceive. The experience of a movie is fundamentally different than the experience of a video game, and most of that difference revolves around you. Player agency is what makes a video game a video game. Even if you're not touching the controller, there's something you've done that makes what's happening your story. By controlling the character, you empathize with them a great deal. You essentially become them. That's why in a video game betrayals and manipulations can feel so much more personal than in a movie. These things are essentially happening to you. Some clever developers have used the medium to emphasize specific moments, such as Solid Snake's painstaking crawl through the microwave tunnel at the end of Metal Gear Solid 4. The game makes you feel every inch becoming more and more difficult as the microwaves drag Snake closer and closer to death. You also control how this character will be a part of their world. This isn't even in specifically player-driven narratives. Your skill and personality change a lot of who the character is to you. Was Snake a stealthy infiltrator, or more of a no-holds-barred commando who wrought loud but strategic violence upon his enemies? Was Lara Croft a merciless killer, or did she do her best to avoid killing when it proved unnecessary? Did Joseph Allen, from the controversial No Russians scene from Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, sacrifice nearly everything about himself in the name of the greater good, or were there lines he chose not to cross? But while player agency is a great tool for storytelling, it can also be a bit of a crutch. Developers think that by making you do certain things for certain characters, you might care for them, despite them being entirely one-dimensional. Or they think that by controlling your character you will automatically like them. A great example of this is a comparison between Assassin's Creed 2's Ezio, 2-3's Connor. Neither might have been the most robust characters, but Ezio was charming and Connor was whiny. As a result, people generally cared a lot more about Ezio's story than Connor's. Video games also have another great crutch that movies do not: gameplay. I feel pretty safe in saying that gameplay is the most important part of a video game. When it comes down to it, players will probably not care about the story if the game itself isn't fun to play. I would say more often than not, the story itself is only there to serve the gameplay, to keep things fresh without being too jarring or confusing. And that's why it's pretty easy to forgive a game for a lackluster story. In fact, it's pretty easy to think a story was better than it was simply because the game was so fun. I love the Gears of War games, but if they were movies instead, I probably wouldn't have taken much interest in them. Something video games mostly have in common with movies is the quality of actors. Today, video games lean heavily upon the performance of actors to tell their stories, drawing from a pool of highly skilled actors well known within the game industry, or even A-listers from the film industry. Acting in video games has become less of a joke as budgets and audiences have expanded. Many are downright serious about it. So why exactly is it that video games seem to make such poor movies? I might argue a great deal of the issue is because most games are games first and storytellers second, at best. They're not meant to be movies. But I do think it's very possible that a great movie could be based off a video game. There are definitely some games with truly great stories. I'll be watching the progress of the movie based on The Last of Us with a great deal of interest. Honestly, I'm fine with games being games. A fun game doesn't always need a great story. I've always had a lot of fun playing Destiny 2, but I wouldn't care to see it as a movie. This would probably go for most of the games I play. And sometimes the influence of players is so integral to the experience that it would be near impossible to make it into a movie. Part of the reason I found Resident Evil 7 so terrifying was because I had to drive it forward. I couldn't rely on some unfortunate character to take me through the story. Some experiences are meant to be games. And that's fine. Until there's a great game movie, I'll continue to thoroughly enjoy both mediums, faults and all. So what do you think? Are video game movies bad because they're based off bad games? Or because they have bad directors? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you got something you want me to talk about, let me know that too. Until then, I'll see you next time.